you've got to know who you are, identity, and to do that, you got to know where you came from. That's history, because those two things will determine where you're going, which is destiny, and it determines what you leave behind, which is legacy. See, we're losing our sense of destiny and legacy as a country because we've lost identity and history.
To see the kind of multiculturalism, pluralism that is infiltrating the United States, we become the UN. They've all convened here. That's never what it was meant when the Founding Fathers were giving us a country.
What has happened in our country to make us the way we are? What brought us to this point? Aside from the providential hand of God, how did God use people to bring us to this place where we are in this country? And what are we forgetting? What are we losing? What are we not telling as far as those stories are concerned? Because we're losing a legacy.
And welcome to the Give Me Liberty podcast of the Standing for Freedom Center at Liberty University, where we defend life, liberty, and truth to ensure the foundations of freedom exist for the next generation. And I'm joined by a cowboy patriot, somebody who is a man of courage. He's quite funny as well, ladies and gentlemen. It's Chad Prather from Blaze. Brother, thank you. Welcome.
What's up, man? That's a mouthful at that intro. You know, you just rattle that thing off.
I've done it a few times.
You've done it a few times. I like it.
Yeah, brother. Hey, we're in the state of California.
I can feel
now.
it.
Yes, you can feel it.
It's a spiritual presence.
Okay, so I would amen that, because actually I've been saying a few prayers since I've been here and I felt it. But I want to talk a little bit about something that I saw this morning on X that you posted. You were in an Uber making your way over to the hotel. Somebody just locked eyes with you. Y'all didn't say a word. They switched the radio to Morgan Wallen.
Morgan Wallen. That's true. We climbed in at LAX and the Korean driver, Hongbo. His name was Hongbo. You know how that tells you the name? And it's like, yep, my Korean driver. Switched. I mean, just without a word being spoken. Straight. Yeah. I got profiled immediately. He didn't miss, though.
Yeah.
I mean, judgments do tend to be accurate.
They do.
Yeah.
You're wearing Ariats? What are you wearing?
No, these are Anderson beans, I think.
Okay.
Anderson beans.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The boots, man. I had to kick them off on the plane yesterday, though.
Did you?
I mean, between boots and compression socks and old age, sitting in a metal tube at 32,000 feet in the air and the air conditioning wasn't working right, I had to get comfortable.
Would you fly American?
Yeah, no, we flew Delta over here.
Okay.
I never fly Delta. I'm a Houston guy, so we had to go from American when I was DFW. American was nice. Now we had to go to United. I just forfeited every point I had.
Man. So okay.
Live in an airplane.
Tell me, first of all, because a few years ago you got involved politically. Like, you've always been involved politically, but you got actually into a race down in Texas.
Yeah, I ran for governor.
I'm
an idiot.
No, you're not an idiot.
You want to talk about a spiritual darkness? I was at the White House a couple of months ago. I've been a couple of times in the last few months. And President Trump brought us into the Oval Office, and it was a great honor to hang out with the president in there. And coming out of there, I was like, you can feel the spiritual oppression of that city, those places of power. And it was the same when I was running for office in Texas. It was a spiritual battle the entire time. People don't understand the spiritual things that are going on around politics.
Right.
Anywhere, but particularly in this country. It's a battle.
Yes,
it is. It is a fight for good versus evil. So I jokingly say that after a 19-month gubernatorial run, I came out of that with some PTSD. Because I have people now who still are encouraging me to run for certain offices, and I'm like, I'm going to have to really pray about that because it was a battle.
Yeah,
it was a battle, and I'm nobody. I mean, in terms of the political thing, I mean, we were running in the primary against Greg Abbott, and there's a huge misconception across the country that Greg Abbott is some staunch conservative guy. He's a politician.
Sure.
He's a politician. Our goal was to pull him further to the right in terms of conservative values. Texas had a lot of issues. It still does. I mean, tons. Our Republicans there are very rhino-y.
Yeah.
There. I mean, yes, it's a Republican state. But
House was divided over Paxton.
Yeah, we have a lot of that. And, the Paxton trial exposed a lot of that. A lot of grassroots conservatives got elected in their primaries and ultimately to the House seats there in Texas because of the Paxton trial. Ken Paxton told me himself, he said it's the best thing that could have happened because it exposed how bad it was in the Texas House. But, it was such a spiritual battle for me with all of that. But we were up against a guy in Greg Abbott who's got a black hole of cash. I mean, $75 million in the bank.
Yeah.
Which is just an endless supply. He gets what he needs. I think we spent maybe $1 million on the whole thing and ran for 18 months. And again, a lot of people thought it was a joke because, of course, I come from the comedy world.
Sure.
But I love Texas.
Yep.
I love the state. I love, conservative values. And I was like, I had actually been funny story, I had been, when I made the decision to do that, Ryan, I was in South Dakota with the Trumps. I was with Don Jr. having dinner. And I made the decision because it was in the middle of the mask mandates, and Abbott had handed out more mandates to the state. And I jokingly say, I don't know if it was because I was drinking wine or sitting with a Trump, but I went to Twitter and I said, I'm going to run for governor.
Yeah.
And I woke up to a firestorm of huge support.
Yeah.
It was on at that point.
I remember you said something really serious. I took you seriously the whole time, but I remember it was a few years ago. You said, look, if Texas doesn't change its ways, and this is my home state. I was born in Amarillo. I was raised in Dallas. I went to school in Austin. I left the state 20 years ago, but all my family, all the friends I grew up with, they're all there, right? Yeah. So we visit all the time. So I love Texas. Texas is my home state. But you said something, and I was like, I'm very concerned. You said if Texas doesn't change its direction, it'll become a blue state.
Yeah, it will. I often refer to the blueberries in the chili, right? The Dallas, Houston, Austin, El Paso, San Antonio, arguably Fort Worth from time to time. That we don't have a red state because we don't have red cities. The thing that saves Texas are the large small towns, the Amarillos, the Lubbocks, the Tylers, the Wacos, the Abilenes. Those, we have a lot of those, and those are staunchly conservative. They tend to be. So that's what keeps Texas out of the weeds, so to speak. But my catchphrase there was Texas. Texas isn't the Texas that most Texans think it is anymore. And if we don't change our ways, then we really are going to have a problem. And we're importing a lot of Californians.
Sure.
A lot of people are coming from very blue states, and they are bringing a lot of things. They may be conservative for California or Oregon or Washington or Illinois or New York, but not necessarily how we would define small government limited conservatism in Texas. And they're bringing a lot of those values with them. And we're also being invaded by people who are coming in with the express purpose of getting on school boards. And they're coming with a liberal progressive ideology. Yeah. And they're coming with the express purpose of turning Texas blue.
Yeah.
I've been in small town Texas and met people who said, man, we got these people that are coming from California. As soon as they've lived here long enough, the first thing they do is they run for the city council, they run for the school board, and they're getting elected. So, so goes, as Alan West often says, so goes Texas, so goes the nation.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And it's like the puzzle it's the piece of the puzzle that holds the rest of the country together. You take that out, and the whole thing just kind of crumbles apart.
Right. You essentially, the four most populous states, you've got California, which we're in right now, you have New York, and you have Texas and Florida. And Texas has got to hold, as Florida is holding fine right now, but those two, in order to check the other side, and so it's a power play for sure.
Well, just look at the critical space we hold in terms of the mass migration and the invasion of people coming into the country illegally. I mean, Texas holds a huge part of that, and I don't feel like we did an adequate job with the powers that we have as a state to really stop that as we could have. So here we are, and Texas plays an important role in all of that stuff. And now we're trying to clean up a huge mess.
Yeah.
With the immigration problem.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that.
Sure.
So, and I was even gonna mention this, but we can get back to it. You have immigration coming in across the southern border. You've got immigrants coming from California, refugees, right? But you also have the kids who were like, you got the baby grandkids in Texas who've grown up basically with the Department of Education indoctrinating them from Washington, D.C., and these various school boards that are run by liberals. So the kids in Texas aren't necessarily safe because the education quality is not quite there. There's not enough homeschooling, Christian education, or alternatives to counter that, right? And so with the borders, let's go back a year versus today. From what you're seeing, is there a huge difference?
Well, statistically, and I will add to your education point, the Board of Regents in the state of Texas, which is overseeing our colleges and universities, is wildly progressive and liberal, and all of those people are appointed by a Republican governor in Greg Abbott. So they got it at every level. Yeah. Even at higher education, we got a problem there. I saw a stat this morning that said last year the encounters in, I think, May of 2024 was 65,000 people at the southern border, and this May 2025 was 0.
Yeah.
So I would say there's a drastic difference that's going on. The Remain in Mexico policy gets brought back into place. I mean, just absolutely shutting it down. You can't say it any better than what Trump said in his address to the joint Congress, where he said, you didn't need another bill, you needed a better president. And so we're seeing a large-scale shutdown, which I think is, it's the grace of God, honestly, to save us from what is honestly been an invasion. You know, 1965, Johnson signed into law the Immigration and Nationality Act.
Yep.
And we went from an origins-based immigration policy, which had been everything that we did. We tried to import people and let immigrants come from nations and places that would closely share our values, so that it was an easier assimilation.
100%, yes.
And then we went to a relational/skills-based deal, which really the skills weren't necessary. But if you could say that you had a cousin who had a barber in Queens and you were related to them somehow, you were allowed to come into the country.
Right.
And so we went from having 86% of our immigrants prior to 1965 being from European countries or countries that shared many of our values, to now them being from places like Africa, places like Central South America,
Right.
Mexico. And so they're coming in. And again, to say that, people are immediately, you know what they're going to do? Oh, you're just a racist transphobe.
Right.
No, we're not. It's just logic.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the great economist Milton Friedman said you can have, and of course I'm paraphrasing, he said you can have one of two things. You can't have both. You can have an open border, or you can have a welfare state. You can't have both.
Yes.
Because if you have an open border with a welfare state, the whole thing's going to collapse on itself.
100% true.
And the idea that we could just throw open the doors the way that we did is nonsensical and insane. It's self-destruction. And you can't just blame the Democrats, because it's a Republican issue too. Democrats wanted to replace the voter base. They wanted to import voters. And Republicans, particularly in Texas, I'm looking at you, George W. Bush. I'm looking at you, George W. They like cheap labor.
Right.
It's an issue where
The Koch brothers as well.
the Koch brothers
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and you know, Forbes magazine came out with an article, I think it was 2019, and I think they repeated it in 21 with an updated version of it, where they used a nonsensical number where they said, oh, open borders will lead to, mass migration is going to lead to a $100 trillion boost in the global economy. Well, first of all, $100 trillion doesn't exist. I mean, that's a made up number. And so, But there's no basis to believe something like that.
Right.
But they say that because you have people that have historically called themselves Republicans. They believe that stuff, that it's going to boost. You know, what's the big debate that's going on right now is whether or not Homeland Security is going to go after the hospitality industry and the agricultural farm and ranching industry that are employing illegals. And Trump kind of put his foot in his mouth last week over that issue and kind of had to pull back, because it's they're either illegal or they're not.
Right.
What's it going to be? And so this is where that debate comes in a big way. We've all benefited from people being here, but and listen, I still contend that 90% of the people who come to this country do come for the right reason.
Right.
They want a better life.
I agree with that. By the way, we're coming out with a theology of politic at the Freedom Center on the issue of immigration and how to think about it biblically. But that thing you cite from the 1960s, Lyndon Baines Johnson, 100% correct. We cite that because what ended up happening with that change in policy is that you had essentially Christian nations,
Right.
so Catholic or Protestant nations supplying the majority, the lion's share of immigrants that were coming into the United States. And then that switched to like the lower third, the third world. And we're talking about developing nations. We're talking about poverty nations where there's no education. And by the way, when it comes to value sets and religion, we're talking about paganism, Eastern mysticism. It's not compatible with the U.S. Constitution. This is one of the things that a lot of people, when they talk about religious liberty, they talk about the fundamentals, like the priors of understanding our constitutional order and being able to assimilate and not just creating an enclave, like a Muslim enclave, is to buy into that system. So being a Christian, you automatically understand, yes, okay, I believe in the Imago Dei. We're all created in the image of God. Therefore, I believe in equality, the biblical standard. So Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, the majority of immigrants up until the middle of the modern century were coming from those countries. Yeah. And so it is fundamentally transformed. We have over 20% of the United States populace foreign-born,
Yeah.
and many of them from nations that do not assimilate into American culture.
They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs.
That's right.
I mean, I've spent over a decade in these countries. I've been to Haiti. I know what they do. I know what the rituals are. So when you're in Ohio talking about they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, I know what the rituals are in Haiti.
Right.
I've seen them firsthand. I've spent time in Little Haiti in the Miami area with the population there over the years. I met the mother of my children in Nigeria. I went all the way to West Africa to meet a white girl from Alabama. I mean, I spent time in West Africa, tons of it.
Yeah.
And you don't have the same values. That's why they made words like assimilate a bad word. Border Patrol's not even supposed to use that word. They're not even supposed to fill out a form and put that word on there because it was a no-no word. And then you have the big elephant in the room, which is Sharia law. And the implementation and the importation in places like Texas, where now they're wanting to build epic cities.
Yes.
And right now we've kind of quelled that, but they just in the Texas House in this latest legislative session, they just did a Pakistan Day, and we're supposed to celebrate Pakistan Day in Texas now, and honoring Ramadan and other Muslim holidays, which. I mean, I don't know how much cancer you want in your body, but to me, a little bit needs to get eradicated.
Yeah.
And when you're bringing in Sharia, which completely does not conform to the Constitution or our values or the Bill of Rights, when you're talking about the implementation or the exercise of Sharia in the United States,
100%.
It's cancer.
It's un-American. That's the problem. So a lot of times people want to, we value religious liberty, of course we do, but that does not necessarily mean religious equity or even pluralism. And so the American system relies on people adopting and believing in the same values and principles. And at the end of the day, Sharia law is unconstitutional because it sets a whole different set of priorities and religious practices that would immediately cause problems with the Bill of Rights, right? So women being treated like property, honor killings for teenage daughters that have been raped. I mean, that's Sharia law. So in the UK and in Europe, the immigration system has been hijacked in order to allow for a mass flooding of people from Muslim countries. And then at the same time, because of their multicultural value system, they say, let's insist on you setting up Sharia courts. There's entire areas of the United Kingdom that they don't even police, that they allow the Muslim immigrant populations to police themselves. They have over 20 major cities with Muslim mayors. All of this is at 7% of the population, whereas in the United States, it's like 1.7% Muslim. So at 7%, the UK is ready to wave the white flag of surrender.
Yeah, the number one name of newborns in Ireland last year was Muhammad. Mm-hmm. And again, I like to paraphrase Mark Twain, who said, nothing destroys prejudice like travel, and nothing destroys travel like prejudice. If you've been around the world, this is not a prejudicial statement. This is not a racial or racist statement. No. This is practical common sense. This is something that if you don't uphold your values, you are literally a generation away from extinction. Read the book of Nehemiah. You don't build a wall, you don't have a nation.
100% true. Yeah.
If you don't have a border, you don't have a nation. If you don't have a culture, you don't have a nation. If you don't have a language, you don't have a nation. So we've turned into all this toxic empathy where everything's got to be hyphenated. So we got to have so-and-so Americans, whether it's African Americans, Guatemalan Americans, and El Salvadoran Americans. Stop all this. You're either an American or you're not.
Yeah. That's right. And so love has been weaponized, compassion's been weaponized. And I think what's interesting, at least with you have true Christians, biblical Christians in the United States who have courage, have backbone because they know how love is defined in Scripture. And then you've got those others that have sort of the amalgamation of Christian ideas and principles, but they're unchurched, okay? Yeah. But they still have, because they're a part of that waspy, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, sphere. This is more of the folks that are not born or raised in the church, but they're dominated by the Western value of love, the Western value of compassion, the Western value of being open and tolerant. And so then you have a militant spirit, which is Islam. They come in, they get invited in. It doesn't start out by jihad. It just starts out, their conquest is, we're going to have as many babies as possible. We're going to live and dwell and build houses and tents, and they have an eschatology of victory, and so then they just grow within the borders of a country until they take it over.
It's a grassroots, organic, bottom-up ideology.
Yes.
And it's a theocratic mindset with martyrdom as an essence that is to be, in their mind, to be admired and pursued. They're willing to die for what they believe in. And here's the thing, because we can throw all these hopeless scenarios out there. What I've been trying to remind people for the last year, it's just been heavy on my heart, is there's a verse in the book of Revelation that says that the way that, the first century disciples, the way they overcame the world is it says they overcame by the word of their testimony, the blood of the Lamb, word of their testimony, and then there's a third part nobody likes, and that is they love not their life even unto death.
Yes, amen.
And see, that's what we've lost. Acts 1:8, when he says, you're going to go into the world and be my witnesses, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the uttermost parts of the earth. That word witness, it as martyria. I mean, we get martyr from that word. I'm calling you to be dead people on furlough. Like, you're already dead. You're dead to yourself. You're waiting to die physically. You're going to be my witness. We've lost that. I mean, we literally had the mission field through open borders. The mission field was brought here. The ends of the earth came here to us. And the church wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Very few were prepared for this. You're talking about living in, I live in the Woodlands area of Texas, north of Houston. There's some great churches there that they were having Sunday services that were Spanish speaking or, something to reach people, then bringing them in, and they were doing a phenomenal job. But I would say that would be the minority of churches who were really, truly trying to find a harvest in that mission field.
Yeah.
Since 1971, Liberty University has had one mission: training champions for Christ. We've been at this for a while, and in the shadow of the Blue Ridge Mountains, we have grown to be a global force. Today, Liberty runs over 100,000 students around the globe, studying across 15 colleges and schools.
And, among them, over 30,000 military students.
Across 700 programs of study, we train as one: nurses, artists, business leaders of the future and today. Together, we work to give back through service trips, local community work, and over 500,000 volunteer hours per year. And we play just as hard as we study, with 20 NCAA athletic programs and 40 club sports teams. So, who are we? We are Liberty University, and we train champions for Christ.
We have, and I totally agree, there is a hopefulness, by the way. And so we know who wins in the end.
Sure.
Christ has overcome the world. We are to make disciples. And traditionally, we would send our Christian missionaries to foreign fields and missions, but the inverse of that has happened. Now the nations have come here. We absolutely need to confront, and I mean this in every biblical sense. Like this is about what it is to make disciples, to proselytize, right? Yeah. Teaching them to obey the commands of Jesus, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So the nations are here. And now we need to be Great Commission people, put our money where our mouth is. And so, I think the challenge in this coming generation is we're going to be confronting parts of the world that Grandma, Grandpa never had to face. My granddad, born in Texas, goes over at 17 years old, stationed in Iceland, then stationed in the UK, goes on those B-17 bombers over Germany. That's how he saw the world. Yeah. He never saw it on a smartphone. He never saw it on an internet. He didn't even, all they had was radio, and they just heard about it. Most of the countries that they were fighting in, they had no idea existed, but they believed in God, they believed in freedom, and they were willing to pay that ultimate sacrifice. They came back heroes, greatest generation, built the institutions, built the nation. But what's fascinating is that to see the kind of multiculturalism, pluralism that has infiltrated the United States, we become the UN. Literally like the United Nations, they've all convened here. That's never what it was meant when the founding fathers were giving us a country. These things we were to hold and keep It's a republic, madam, if you can keep it. That's what Benjamin Franklin said. We don't have a kingdom. We don't have an empire. We're not Dubai. We're trying to create some kind of autonomous zone or international city for commerce. We are a nation with a people, and we want to have children. And I think that's one of the biggest blessings. Many Christians don't think in terms of posterity. They're thinking in terms of just eternity. And yes, eternity, and yes, also posterity.
Yeah. I often equate that to people's individual lives, but it works for a nation as well. You've got to know who you are, identity, and to do that, you got to know where you came from. That's history. Because those two things will determine where you're going, which is destiny, and it determines what you leave behind, which is legacy. See, we're losing our sense of destiny and legacy as a country because we've lost identity and history. And they want to retell the story. So what I've been doing a lot on my show, the Chad Prather Show, in recent months is talking about the forbidden history, because you have the revised history or the forgotten, but I've been talking about the forbidden history. What has happened in our country to make us the way we are? What brought us to this point? Aside from the providential hand of God, how did God use people to bring us to this place where we are in this country? And what are we forgetting? What are we losing? What are we not telling as far as those stories are concerned? Because we're losing a legacy. And you talk about children and grandchildren, what we're leaving behind, things that they're not going to have that we enjoyed. They're not going to have it because we are literally that generation away from extinction. You know, de Tocqueville said, and I'm again paraphrasing, he said, America will survive if America can be good.
Yeah.
It was built for a moral, John Adams said that.
Yeah.
It's built on the basis of a moral good people.
Yes.
And if you lose that, then you've lost everything. And we do. I mean, we've listed off a whole host of symptoms in this country right now that is cultural rot. I was walking through a farmer's market years ago, and I saw a sign over a thing of peaches. This guy was selling his produce, and it said it was for his workers. And he said, basically reminding them to check the fruit. It said, today's spot is tomorrow's rot. So basically look for the spots that are there and eliminate the bad fruit, or the whole thing's going to turn to rot.
That's right. Yeah. 100%. I do want to switch gears. Talk a little bit about the no kings thing.
Yeah.
Is this?
Well, it must have worked. We don't have one.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. But it's interesting because before coming out here, I was like, well, what am I going to see? Right. And how big is it going to be? I haven't seen anything. It's like it's all dissipated or disappeared. Hey, let's have this massive day of protest. It hardly seems organic, right? Like it's not one of these things where there's no movement here, right? When parents were protesting what was happening in schools, that was a movement. There was no app that organized them together, and parents actually had to take time off of work to go down there and tell school teachers what's up, right?
Yeah.
And stop indoctrinating my kids, stop putting porn into the libraries. Stop putting this illicit content in the minds of 6-year-olds. This is awful. This is wicked. But that was a movement of real parents doing something. This thing, it seems completely centralized. It seems like there's lots of money. It's coming from all the same sources that it's come from for the past 20 years. But what do you think in terms of like next generation? Do you think that this is going to capture the hearts of young people, young men in particular, or do you think that actually there is a real vibe shift?
I think there's a lot of dynamics at play right there. We had dinner last night at a restaurant across the street, which I'll just put it this way: there were no white people in there. It was Hispanics, 100% Hispanics in there, and then us. And so I struck up a conversation with the guy that was sitting next to me. He seemed like he wanted to talk, so we started talking. Hispanic guy, young guy, and he immediately started telling me. He said, "This protest stuff is nonsense." He said, "We're here legally." He said, "I'm here legally. My family's here legally." He said, "I voted for Trump," and he said, "I believe in Trump," and I said, "I think Trump's going to be just fine." And I said, "Can we make a quick video together?" And we did. And it was interesting from his perspective to hear that. And I said, "What do you think about these protests?" And he said, "There's nothing." He said, nobody that believes like we do thinks that way." Because, as you said, it's a BLM 2.0. When they start dropping the pallets of bricks and throwing the Molotov cocktails and organizing the protest, it's not visceral, it's not real, it's not grassroots. It's paid activism.
Yes.
And, I can remember seeing a BLM rally, a march in Tulsa a few years ago, and I counted 750 people walked past, and only one person of color was in the group. If you watch the people who are in these protests and the rhetoric that they're using, this stolen land, all of this nonsense, you're not getting that message from, and again, the masks on the faces, hiding the identity. It's hard to take any of that stuff seriously. Like if I have a grievance, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to talk to you about it, and I'm going to voice that, but I want you to know my name. I want you to know my face. I want you to know where this is coming from.
Yes.
I want you to know my heart on that. Going out in the street and turning over cars and making a show for the media to come out and say, well, it's just people enjoying watching cars burn. I mean, they literally said that.
Yeah.
It's nonsensical. And I don't think it does create the movement, as you said, the vibe, because here's my thing. I have a friend of mine who pastored a church years ago. He actually took over a church that I had pastored, and he had this idea. He said, everybody that comes to church, I want to start giving them a sack of groceries. And that's what he said, I'm going to give them a sack of groceries every time they come. And I said, well, what happens? You get these people coming and taking home a sack of groceries. That sounds cool. But what happens when the groceries run out? I said, because what you use to bring people in is what you got to use to keep them.
Yeah.
And when the groceries run out, so what happens when the payments for the activists run out or they stop doing it? It's going to go the way of BLM. You're going to find out there was corruption at the top. There was somebody who was pocketing all the money. You're going to have your Patrice Carruthers, whatever her name is, who's buying mansions out here in Beverly Hills.
Yes.
Or whatever part of LA she's in, white community. And you're going to find that this is going to happen. Because, again, once the curtain pulls back and you see what Oz really is, it's not as impressive anymore.
Yeah.
And people tend to go off somewhere.
Yeah.
Now, what they would love to have in this whole thing, to really put some emphasis behind it, is rather than George Floyd, they'd like to have a Jorge Floyd. They'd love to see somebody get hurt, murdered, killed by a cop, or shot by a Marine, or
a trans Floyd.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They would love to have that because that would put some momentum behind what they're doing, which I think is one of the reasons why they localize these protests to about a 4-block radius, and they bring the media in there where they can see everything, and it's like a chop zone, Chaz zone, whatever they call that thing in Seattle, and it's where the Marines are, it's where the National Guard tends to go in, and that's where all the focus is because they'd love nothing more than to get a clip of that.
Yeah. And by the way, let me go back to the whole notion of the Floyd thing, which becomes kind of the symbol in the patron saint of whatever that movement is, right? The social justice, whatever it is, the narrative. But what was interesting is we've seen a number of these like trans shooter type events. The one obviously is the Covenant School in Nashville, but the number of people that are they want to jump on and suppress the information because the media doesn't want that to get out. Doesn't want that news to get out. So you have the King's protest and things like that, the BLM, all of that. But then the moment that mayhem is created, the moment that you have mass casualty, carnage event, mass murder, mass shooting, and who's the perpetrator? What's the description? Was this a white male? Oh my gosh, no! It was one of these patron saint type folks of the social justice movement, literally going in and shooting up kids in a school. We cannot release the information about what they said. Why not? So you're talking about the forbidden history. They were working in the FBI, this is under the Biden administration, various intelligence agencies to suppress that information. They were even using the Southern Baptist Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission leader in order to try to suppress that information in Nashville, simply because they didn't want that information to get out there to the public so the public could form an opinion. Oh my goodness, these guys are dangerous. These people are. This is a huge mental health disorder, and instead of coddling trans and we need to figure out how to confront this challenge. Yeah. Anyway,
well, you look at this assassination situation in Minnesota with these the speaker, the House Speaker and the senators, the state senators that were there, and they immediately don't release the manifesto. We know the guy has a list of people he wanted to kill, and they just don't come out with it. They let the public form the narrative. And then what happens is you end up with a talking point of fine people on both sides because they can control the clip, control it. And once the brainwashing happens through that, well, it doesn't. Then you can release it later on, and it doesn't change the way people are thinking about this because the damage has been done.
Yes.
The sound bites are out there. Trump supporter does this. They sell all this crazy stuff. Just put the information out there.
Right.
This is a free society. But this is what happens when you have a country of people who did not receive an education through the Department of Education. They received an ability to do rote memory for a test, and then they forgot it all. And common sense aside, we don't teach critical thinking.
Yeah.
We don't trust people anymore to think critically. So we give them a standardized test, call that an education. We teach them rote memory.
Yeah.
They memorize chapters out of a book. We call that, and it's not education at all. My friends with wall builders, I mean, they'll tell you right now, they say, listen, we've got tests, exit exams from 1900. Because then kids, they went to school about 8th grade, and then that was it. He said, we've got the exit exams from 1900. He said, we've given that test to over 200 PhD education students. And he said, not a single one of them's ever passed it. That's how far the nature of education has been lost in this country. But they don't release manifestos or information or history or anything else so that you can think about it critically and draw your own conclusions, because you got to have the tyranny of the talking head media that's got to tell you something 24/7. And when they run out of news, they're going to make news up.
Yes,
I said that back in the 80s as a kid. I said, when Ted Turner came out with CNN, I said, what are they going to talk about for 24 hours?
Right.
When they run out of news, they're going to make stories up. And then it becomes tabloid-esque, Esquire type, Inquirer.
Yeah.
The magazine.
And most of those shows are just commentary now.
It's op-ed pieces. Journalistic objectivity is dead. So at the end of a story or reading a news article, if I know the opinion of or the position of the author, then that wasn't journalism. Right. That was an op-ed. And that's what we do. All of these news channels, that's all they are. Nobody just tells the news anymore because they don't trust the American people to think critically, or they're afraid they would to put two and two together. And so they got to send the sound bites out there and let people they got to form the narrative for people, brainwash them with it. So then if there is a shooting, if there's a manifesto, if there's anything like that, rather than letting people draw their own conclusions, the conclusions have been made for them.
Interestingly enough, piggybacking off of what you just said, so they've done a study more recently. I mean, it just came out like this last week. ChatGPT, Grok, use all these AI generative tools that people are using. They've now done studies on what does that do to someone's brain if they're relying on these, over a long period of time. And interestingly enough, it's dumbing people down.
Sure.
Right? So in terms of curating, in terms of here, we're going to just give you the content right here. We're going to teach you how to think. We're even going to, if you type in and you have a certain question, you give it a prompt, what it's giving you back is also been put through an algorithm that is going to give you mainly a leftist perspective. If you're lucky, it might be centrist, left of center, centrism. But at the end of the day, it is not going to give you the full orb of all the information or the data. Yeah, I'm trying to be nice to AI. Like I say please and thank you when I use it, just so when Skynet becomes self-aware, I'll be one of the, right. I'll be an ally. But this is, I saw an article the other day that said that not only are kids in schools using ChatGPT and AI to study for their tests or write their papers, but the professors are using it to grade them. Yeah. And that, to me, is everything. That tells you everything about our educational system, our lack of critical thinking. I'm a creator. Now, when I say that, I do comedy for a living. I write music for a living. So, in essence, words are everything to me. A foundational thing for me. Enarche anhologos, John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word. If we're letting a computer write our words for us and dictate our thoughts for us and tell people how they should think, that is the epitome of laziness. Yes. Mental apathy and laziness.
So you're looking for a university that's perfect for you, a school that has anything you could possibly need.
Anything?
You want a place that has the programs you want to study, and maybe a few more, just in case you change your mind.
I think I'm going to sign up for the fashion design program.
All right. A place with state-of-the-art facilities. I mean, look at this campus.
And who doesn't love big-time sports?
And great recreational activities.
Okay, now we're on a roll. Somewhere you can hike, slide, strike, shoot, climb, eat, and most importantly, eat. You want a place that takes you to space? Okay, maybe not, but we can teach you how to fly, or pastor a church, or run a business. And all that with a great view? Yeah, I think I know a place.
And so I think one of the things is it's going to be like everything else. Television, digital devices, people are going to have to make a decision and draw a line in the sand. Do I want to be smart or want to be dumb? Do I want to rely on this, right? Do I want to use my own feet, or do I want to be like sitting the whole time in a chair, wheeling myself around if I can walk, right? And so it is a kind of, I forget what the sickness is, where people self-amputate an otherwise healthy arm. It's like having an amputated brain because they're not exercising or using it. It is a God-given tool. The Lord has put this mind in us, and this is part of what it is to be made in His image, right? That we're thinking creatures, we're capable of moral reason, and then we also have a soul, and no other animal has that. Well, we're not an animal, but no animal in creation has that. Homo sapiens, human beings created in God's divine image, we are very unique with that regard.
I had a professor, I went to seminary, and I had a seminary professor who said, we don't like to think because thinking is hard.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's so simple and so profound. But, one of the original mandates that God gave man was work. Work wasn't because of the curse. The challenges of work is because of the curse. Imagine being able to work and create. I think we'll work in heaven. Yeah. I really do, because I think man is made to create. Men are made to produce and to be fruitful. And the curse came, and God said, okay, well, now it's by the sweat of your brow you're going to do this. It's not unhindered, unfettered creativity anymore. We're going to let you still work.
Yeah.
But now there's going to be thorns and thistles and roots and stumps, and the dirt's going to resist you, and it's by the sweat of your brow you're going to do that. And so we're basically saying, I just don't want to work anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't want to think anymore because thinking's hard.
Yeah. No.
It's a doomed society when you get away from that.
Yeah. And so when you said, and I agree with you, so you go back to Exodus, one of the things where Moses is going to Pharaoh and he's like, let my people go. This is Yahweh, talking, who's this God that I got to listen to him? And so he's basically saying, let my people go that they may worship me in the wilderness for 3 days. We're going to bring them back. What Pharaoh did that was essentially oppressive was he subjugated them to slavery, the Israelites, and oppression, but they weren't able to worship God as He had created them. He was still their people. God had made a covenant with Abraham. And so part of it was worship, but He didn't get rid of work. It wasn't that work in and of itself was bad. It's that it was work divorced from worship. And so Paul gives us,
statement,
right? And so it's like, you were made to do this. So Pharaoh's like, you got to work. I'm going to multiply your sorrows. I'm going to multiply your burdens. You're going to make bricks without straw. What God was wanting them to do is actually, in their fullness of how He had created them, that you are my people. Later on, you're a priesthood, a holy nation. You're going to be a blessing to the world. They were created in order to worship, but yes, work. Paul gives the instruction in the New Testament for the church, like, we want to, the church of Thessalonica. He's like, you guys are lazy. Yeah. Like, you're Christians, but like, you're lazy. You're not working. Like, I didn't even receive tithes and offerings from you. I showed you how to work, and I wanted you to imitate my example. And so, like, this is the whole point. A lot of people have these false dichotomies of secular versus sacred divide. No, God had intended for us to put these things together. So for Christians, anyone listening, like, yes, we're created to think. We need to put stress on our brain. We need to grow. We need to put stress on our body. We need to build muscle, right? And all that connective tissue, God has created us for that purpose, and we glorify Him with our bodies and with our work.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting in the years to come to see how much increase of dementia and Alzheimer's is going to happen with people not using their brain, not stretching their minds, not using, and that separation, that split between what people have considered sacred work versus secular work. It's all sacred work.
Yeah.
That's why there is marketplace ministry. I think the kingdom, the domain of the king, it is a place where God does things His way, and it has to happen in every aspect of our lives.
Yes.
From our relationships to our child raising to the work. I mean, all of it has to be ultimately all things under the glory of God.
Yeah.
And the way we use our minds. And so we've got some challenges in front of us. It'd just be cool if you could just be a dog. Somebody you just wake up every day and people feed you and pet you, and you could just jump up in their lap without invitation.
And you don't remember what happened 5 minutes ago.
You don't have a clue.
Yeah.
And you're just like, you know what? Put me down when I'm done.
Okay. So Chad, what's the future look like? Let me ask you this. So is politics beyond the scope? Like, are you thinking you might run again?
I don't know. It would have to be a burning bush that would say, because that was sort of a burning bush moment for me as far as the run there. There were a lot of people who were wanting me to. My good friend Steve Toth, who's a state rep there in Texas, he's District 15 in Texas, has decided that he's going to run against Dan Crenshaw. He will make that announcement here in the next week officially.
Okay. Yeah.
And because I saw him, we were at a birthday party together in February, and he looked at me, he said, "Are you going to do it?" And I said, "No, I think you're going to do it." And he goes, "I think you should do it." And I said, "Steve, just do it."
Yeah.
I said, "I'll back you. I got you. You will do it." And then there were people who wanted me to run for his seat. My good friend Christian Collins, I think, is going to do that. And I said, "Nope, I'm going to back Christian on that." I just say if there's better, and I told Dan Crenshaw, I said, if somebody else doesn't do it, I will do it. I'll come for you.
Yeah.
We will make this bloody. We will go after it.
You think his days are numbered? Or
Hope so.
Okay. What is
It's a gerrymandered district, and all the money in the world and all the lobbies in the world are behind him, which is unfortunate. But
Right.
I hope they are.
Yeah.
I hope politically he's a thing of the past.
Yeah. By the way, I love Christian Collins. He's a Liberty grad. He's a good friend. I like what they're doing at the Texas Youth Summit.
Love
they're
him.
growing that thing, and we've been a part of that in the past. But yeah, what gives you hope for the future?
There are good people out there. There's Christian Collins of the world. And the Texas Youth Summit, when you can get thousands of young people together. I think that, I said something earlier. I said we've got, a lot of blue cities out there, right? I think that's maybe something that we've been misled to believe as well. Yeah, I think in our urban centers we do have a lot of leftist leaning. Hey, listen, if we don't trust the voting and the voting machines and the election integrity, how can we truly prove that we have all these blue voters out there? I think that this past election cycle proved to us that there's a lot of people out there who are sick to death of politics as usual. They don't want their lives run by 4.5 unelected bureaucrats in the beltway of D.C. They are hopeful for the future. There's young people who are getting involved. I mean, whether it's a TPUSA rally or debate on a campus or whatever it is, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Pick your label, pick your group. I see hope in young folks. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're surrounded by young folks in this room right now, and I'm encouraged by that. They're smart, they're intelligent, they think critically, they got common sense, they have values. I just married off my oldest daughter the other day. She's 27 years old. I both gave her away and officiated, which is a blessing and hard to do. And we wept. I wept more than anyone. But
congrats.
Thank you. They came to me independently of one another. Her husband and her came to me independently, and they said, we want you to know. They did this. I don't think they knew the other one did it. But my son-in-law, he came to me, and he said, I want you to know that I've been virtuous with your daughter. It's been a pure relationship.
Awesome.
He said, we've been together 2 years, and I want you to know that we're both going into this virgins, and we have had a pure relationship, and I want you to know that I've never dishonored her, and I never will. And so it made me cry again, you know. It was a blessing to me. So when I see that, I hear that, those values, the virtue, there's a lot of young people out there. That's what gives me hope for the future.
Yeah.
And they're rallied. And they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They're way smarter than me.
Yes. I'm going to add something just came to my mind. When we look at the billions of dollars that, you know, leftist financiers are putting and pouring into these elections, and they're saying, you know, look, Democrats are outspending Republicans, you know, 10 to 1, 15 to 1, you know, like in some of these races. You flip that script around, though, and you say, you mean they have to spend that much convincing the American people that they're right? That is probably a win. You know, if you think about it, it's like, look at all the money, and yet they still lost the national election. Yeah. You know, I put it this way. They have to take an entire month in the month of June, and they want to devote it to pride, to convince men and women the opposite of what we know to be true in nature. Because God has created this universe. It belongs to him. So you have to devote an entire month or even an entire year. I mean, under the Biden administration, every day was LGBT day, right? Every day was whatever day of visibility. If they don't do that, people will go back to the natural state of things that God has created, because you can't dispute it.
Yeah,
right?
you can fund disorder all you want, but things will come back into its natural cycle of being. And because you can't continue in a state of entropy like that, and that's what they're trying to do. It's a campaign of entropy. They want to tear society apart by these things. And I look at all of these things just go to social media, to your point. Just go to social media, look at the name calling, look at the vitriol, look at the hate on the part of the progressive left. If somebody immediately goes to name calling, and listen, I love good ridicule and mocking. I mean, again, comedy, it's in the job description. I enjoy it. But they don't have ideas that they can defend.
Right.
Their ideals and their ideas, they can't have. And this country, going back to where we started this conversation, this country was founded by men who believed in debate and disagreement and discussion and dialogue. But at the end of the day, there was a guiding factor that brought them back together and said, okay, Jefferson, Adams, we may hate each other, but we agree on this. And that's where we've got to get back to in this country. I don't think that we can, barring an extreme miracle from God. As far as the progressive left and those who would consider themselves the conservative right. I don't see that coming back, just simply because the left, in my opinion, has gone so far off the edge. I mean, when Bill Maher makes sense sometimes, when Van Jones makes sense sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm like,
what's happening?
Who am I listening to?
Right.
I just saw my buddy Ben Ferguson on with Van Jones yesterday, and I'm like, called Ben. I was like, how was that?
Yeah.
You know, but they're having a conversation.
Yes.
That I get.
Yeah.
That I get. But some of these people you can't have an ideological conversation with any of these people.
No. And by the way, Van Jones, I forget what he said. It was something that he actually agreed with Mike Huckabee on something. Yeah. And it was a few months ago. But Bill Maher made a campaign the past 3 years, essentially supporting every idea that we had. Yeah. You know, he was essentially giving a tacit endorsement to Donald Trump, and then he would come back and he would slap back or give a little jab here or there. But during the entire Biden-Harris administration, Maher was going on consistently night after night, reaffirming what we all believed. It was nuts. Now he's gone back to the manufacturer default settings, of being a liberal and being wrong, but
you're not, and that's a correct statement.
Yes. Well, brother, I so appreciate you coming on the Give Me Liberty podcast. Thank you for standing for life, liberty, and truth, and thank you for being funny.
I appreciate you, brother. I always do, man. I'm thankful for you. And I went and looked at your X account this morning, and apparently the powers that be had me unfollowed you. I've had to follow back. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
It's happening.
It's a crazy world we're living in.
That's right. Well, we'll keep following each other.
Yeah, man.
God bless.
You too.
Hey, did you find this helpful? I hope you did. Please like and subscribe, share with a friend, and also go to standingforfreedom.com where you can find more content, articles, podcasts, and our Theology of Politics series, all at standingforfreedom.com.